Anyone who plays multiplayer knows how sad it can be to find your childhood favorites full of empty servers, with maybe a scant few Spanish-speaking servers left active. This is a natural part of a game's course of life, but you'll always be able to play these games with friends if you set up a LAN party or a Tungle/Hamachi server. They're preserved so that we can look back on them as they were intended to be played years and years down the road. A bot match is no way to play Left 4 Dead, but as long as there are 4 computers left on Earth, you'll always be able to get into a LAN match and play the game exactly as it was meant to be played. It's natural for games to die, but by simply allowing for community servers, which is very easy to do, games will never be erased. However, at least as early as 2003, this stopped being a given. Whether it's the games not supporting private servers, an anti-cheat system, or more modern forms of DRM, tons of games are on life support these days, and the publishers would be more than happy to pull the plug if it turns out to be even slightly more profitable in the short term. These games and many more almost definitely will die someday, and I don't mean that all the servers will be empty, I mean that they will simply cease to exist, and physical copies will be unplayable. There will be no historical archive of all this art outside of YouTube Let's Plays, which, as anyone who's ever taken turns with a buddy in a single-player game will tell you, is nothing like actually playing the game. Say what you will about the artistic merit to these games, they're all art. And even if you don't agree, they're all the culmination of dozens or hundreds of people's hard work and passion, and this isn't restricted to multiplayer either. Plenty of single-player games or game modes require a constant internet connection, a lifeline, too. Hitman 2016 and its sequel, Diablo 3, StarCraft 2, Anthem, Destiny, and oh yeah, almost every Steam game ever made. There are a handful of Steam games that can be launched directly from the EXE without having Steam open, and plenty others that have been cracked, but let this be a reminder that you don't truly own your Steam library. Steam won't last forever, and I somehow doubt that when the servers shut down they're going to roll out game updates to crack every single game that's on there. Firstly, it would be a hell of a lot of development time, and secondly, it'd be a legal nightmare. Someday, your Steam account is going to be nothing but useless data floating around on some outdated databank somewhere. The most common justification for always online DRM, or any other form of game life support, is that it's only crappy shovelware games that get shut down. Well, firstly, that's bullshit. I don't care if it's a Plants vs. Zombie knockoff that uses blatantly stolen TF2 artwork in its App Store screenshots, no game should ever die. I'm a bit of a blue tide when it comes to this stuff, but archival is incredibly important. Firstly, it's a matter of principles. Who are we to decide which games are worthy of continued existence and which ones aren't? We shouldn't have to make that decision. Just because there aren't many players in a game doesn't mean it should completely die, especially when the publishers can release the game's source code for free, making the game essentially eternal so long as there's at least one person in the community who can make sense of the code. Secondly, the notion that only the worthless games die just isn't true. My first experience with this was May of 2014. Halo 1 on the PC was one of my favorite games growing up, and the multiplayer was like a dream come true. In fact, it was really my first exposure to online gaming circles. It was loaded with community servers with customized maps full of teleporters and scorpion tanks, spawning wherever the server owners wanted them to. Mind you, these were community servers run completely independent of GameSpy or Gearbox. You could even crack Halo 1 and play on them without needing to pass a DRM check if, like me, all your CD keys were too worn to use. But when GameSpy shut down, Halo 1 and tons of other games had their multiplayers completely destroyed. The community servers were unplayable, and a game that had held on to a small collection of loyal fans for 11 years suddenly became unplayable. That is horrifying, and it tells me that this isn't even a new problem. Halo 1 launched on PC with GameSpy in 2003, and it was always inevitable that it would eventually become unplayable. Another great game that was affected by the GameSpy shutdown is Borderlands. Again, a great multiplayer game turned completely unplayable. Fortunately, both of these games and several others that were affected by the shutdown were eventually patched, either unofficially by fans or officially by their publishers, the latter being much more rare naturally, but this is the exception to the rule. The point is that this doesn't just affect small App Store and Facebook games. Halo 1 completely revolutionized gaming, and Borderlands defined an entire subgenre of shooters, one that's a massive trend in gaming to this day, and yet they both just die out of nowhere because some archaic company bites the dust. I probably wouldn't even be talking about this problem if it was solved, but believe me, it's gotten much, much worse, and with the next console generation, it's likely to become almost as bad as possible. Overwatch, Hitman, The Crew, Destiny, Anthem, every Uplay, EA Origin, BethesdaNet, or Battle.net game, and a hell of a lot of Steam games are just some of what's at risk right now. I mean hell, I picked up Steep the other day in the Steam summer sale, and I know that I almost definitely won't be able to play it in 7 years tops. I'm genuinely loving this game, but I feel dirty for even supporting this business model. The idea that all of these games could die someday sounds like the end of the world. But if there's one trend in the games industry, it's the trend of publishers always figuring out new and innovative ways to take what used to be assumed customer rights away from us and putting the power in their hands. Games as a service, the death of big budget gaming history. These beautiful peaks and this exciting gameplay I'm showing now will soon be nothing but ash in Ubisoft's furnace, and a handful of stunt compilations and Let's Plays. Like a lot of things that the big budget game industry has ruined, a Netflix for games isn't inherently a bad idea. Hell, I'd say it's pretty exciting as an alternative to the normal way of doing things. Some people like to try out tons of different games, and that's great, I do it too. But games as a service would make an environment in which a Netflix for video games is the only way of playing them. Airplane isn't on Netflix anymore, but you can still buy a copy of it, one that literally can't be taken away from you no matter what. One that you actually own. In other words, Netflix is only better than buying a copy of every movie you want to watch because you can still buy the movies and keep them permanently. Games as a service is a bit more insidious. Once the game gets taken off the quote-unquote Netflix, it's almost definitely gone for good. Think of a game series that's gone to crap, for instance Splinter Cell. Splinter Cell Chaos Theory was great, but the newer entries are missing a whole lot of what made that game so fun and interesting. With games as a service, those new ones are the only ones that the publishers would bother to host. Chaos Theory would only exist in Let's Play videos online, and that's basically evil. It's just a modern day book burning, and that's no exaggeration. This is a system in which the classics would be completely lost to time, and the main reason for this is that the next generation of consoles will be heavily streaming based. You won't even be downloading the games, so a community crack saving a game from extinction is essentially impossible. Your controller inputs will be streaming to a more powerful PC owned by the game publisher, and what's on screen will be streamed back to you. Not only does this completely screw over those with crappy internet, or those who like to mod, but it allows publishers to literally wipe a game from existence. You won't even be able to get to the main menu. The idea of live streaming games for a monthly fee might ring a bell for some of you guys. OnLive, a service that was both ahead of its time and ahead of its technology. It worked exactly like what I described above. You live streamed the games from a more powerful PC, and a list of available games would all be free to you if you paid the monthly fee. You could even try them out for a half hour totally for free. It was great, but internet speeds at the time couldn't really handle that much data being streamed real time. But for people that had horrible PCs, playing with that horrible compression was a totally understandable alternative to just not being able to play the games at all. But above all else, it was independent of the game publishers. Sure, they had to make deals with the publishers to host their games, but OnLive wasn't owned by them, which means that you could still buy the games if you wanted to and play them forever. This is exactly how Netflix operates. It used to be that Netflix dominated the market and didn't truly have to answer to any film or TV networks. Everyone that was anyone was already on Netflix. While a monopoly like that definitely isn't a good thing, nowadays if you want to watch what you want to watch when you want it, you need to be subscribed to at least 2 different services, more for most people. Netflix, Hulu, HBO Now, Amazon Prime, and YouTube Red, just to name a few. This would be like if record labels decided they weren't getting enough cash from Spotify, and 2 years later you had to have a different music subscription for each record label, and surprise surprise, even if OnLive were more successful, it would eventually be replaced by what game publishers are talking about nowadays. It's not a Netflix for games, it's a series of HBO Nows for games. If you're an Xbox player who likes Ubisoft games, you'll need a subscription to Microsoft's streaming service, and a subscription to Ubisoft's game service, and if you want to play just a single EA game, you'll need to get your subscription to EA's game service, and believe me when I say that tons of other publishers are most definitely having meetings regarding this concept. Blatant evidence of that is the fact that we're seeing these publisher-centric Steam alternatives cropping up: Bethesda Launcher, Battle.net, Epic Games Launcher, and of course Uplay and EA Origin. Once you factor in your ISP, you'll almost definitely have to pay upwards of $100 a month to play your games if you're on console. Also that the publishers you've given your money to can decide that a certain niche game with a loyal fanbase isn't getting enough monthly plays and completely erase it, and all the passionate work that went behind its creation, from playability. Like I said, pure evil. Fortunately, most indie games are pretty much safe from dying like this, because the corporate ladder isn't so high that the passion is invisible from the highest rung. Really, it's the indie games where most of the innovative ideas, artistic integrity, and respect towards the audience and the medium comes from. But all of these trends in the big budget gaming space can and will affect at least one game you love in the next few years. It happened with Halo 1 in 2014, and it was evil then. It's a problem that's only going to get worse and worse, until the idea of customer rights is just a distant and dying memory to any fans of big budget games. The big budget companies have turned microtransactions, loot boxes, pre-order bonuses, collector's editions, DLC, review embargoes, day one patches, early access, cosmetic or gameplay item drops, cinematic trailers, vertical slices, online features and single-player games, and tons of other once interesting tools in a game designer's belt into dirty words. They've slowly but surely gotten the mainstream games audience to be okay with business practices that would have looked more fitting on The Simpsons 20 years ago, and you don't need to be Criswell to predict that they're going to turn Netflix for games into a dirty word too. I know that this isn't exactly the type of content you subscribe for, but I want to put as much attention as possible on certain issues. I don't usually express opinions like this that are bordering on political, but the things I'm going to be talking about in this new series, industrial issues, are what I see as the biggest ethical problems with the games industry. Another reason that I'm starting this series is so that I have a less formal video format in which I can give channel announcements without really breaking the tone of a video. So I'd like to end this first one by saying that I'm going to be taking some time off to replay Planescape Torment to research for an upcoming analysis, as I said I was going to in my 300 subscribers video. It's the sort of game that I need to dedicate all of my attention to, so whether it takes 2 weeks to get through or a month, there's going to be a longer than usual wait before my next video. That being said, depending on how quickly I can finish the newest game, I might be doing a video on Yakuza before taking my break. I've spent basically this entire year trying to figure out how to talk about the Yakuza games, and I think the newest entry on PC, Yakuza Kiwami 2, has given me that angle. Not being able to completely immerse myself in such a long game as Planescape Torment is the harm in releasing my videos on a regular schedule, but once I finish this Planescape Torment video, I will have covered all of my top 10 games of all time, so I'm going to try to knock this one out of the park. I had to pull off of the road in tears and write my opening paragraph down a few weeks ago when I came up with the thesis for this video, making it the third game to ever make me cry, so it's almost definitely going to be one of my most personal videos. If you want to know how this project is coming along, I'll be posting updates on my Discord. It really shouldn't take any more than 3 weeks, but Planescape Torment is a long and an intricate game. Anyways, remember this. Steam is always online DRM, games as a service is pure bullshit, big game publishers see games as fuel for the fire rather than art, and you shouldn't trust a single word that comes out of their mouth, even if you really like some of their games. Thanks for watching.